Why has Nosferatu been the project you've always wanted to remake?
I first saw Nosferatu when I was 9 years old. I was just utterly mesmerized, like initially by Max Schreck's performance, but then also they took the Dracula story and they turned it into a much simpler, enigmatic fairy tale.
What was it like for you to be in the physical place that inspired the material?
But it was emotional to finally do it, you know, just to be on this backlot that's like 6 city blocks created for the movie, knowing that Craig, my production designer, the first film we did together was a movie called The Witch, where we created this tiny little thatched farm, and that felt, at the time, like a major achievement, you know.
And some of the people here who watched it as well have had nightmares because of it.
Splendid.
You are behind the scenes with me here in the Times Square studio. Behind me, you're watching CBS Saturday Morning with Dana Jacobson and Michelle Miller, and I'm about to present my story on Nosferatu in my interview with Robert Eggers. But the thing about TV is that you only get so much time to present your story, so here I am presenting it live. The good news is we have cut an extended version of my conversation with the director, and you're about to see it right now. You're known for your attention to detail and being historically accurate in your works. Why is that?
I like history, I like the past, I like exploring who we are and where we're going from where we came from. And I think if I wasn't some kind of a storyteller, a visual artist, I probably would have been an archaeologist. So the act of research just excites me. And the more that the material world of the period is articulated with accuracy, the more that you can invest in the world and an audience, and also believe in these, you know, more far-fetched things that the characters believe in. And I just, there is no such thing as authenticity, as much as that's what I like strive for. It's always going to be my interpretation of authenticity. But another pleasure of it is that it unites me and all of my creative heads of department, the costume designer, the production designer. Everybody knows like what the goal is, and so it also helps to create an accumulation of details more quickly, because you're not imagining what would this chair look like, how would this person be dressed. You simply like discover what would be accurate for this kind of person in this period, with this social background in this country, blah blah blah, and then you replicate it.
How does the exploration of the occult or mythical ideas and folklore, how does that help us today?
I think that archetypal stories and concepts, fairy tales, folk tales, fables, myths, can always be reinterpreted and can always be relevant. There's a reason why Oedipus is playing in the West End in London right now, and it's going to open on the other side of the river in a couple months with a different production. We still read Hansel and Gretel to our children. These are stories that we can always find new meaning in, and that's part of what draws me to them.
Why has Nosferatu been the project you've always wanted to remake?
So I first saw Nosferatu when I was 9 years old. I saw a picture of Max Schreck, who plays the vampire Orlok, in a book about vampires in the school library. And then my mom helped me track down a VHS. We had to order it. It was a thing. There was no Amazon. There was no YouTube. And I was just utterly mesmerized, like initially by Max Schreck's performance and this iconic makeup design that he designed himself. But then also Murnau and the screenwriter Galeen and their team, they took the Dracula story and they turned it into a much simpler, enigmatic fairy tale with a lot more question marks. And then there was also something about the atmosphere of the film, particularly because, today, even on YouTube, you can find restored versions of the Murnau film that are very clear, and you see his vision. But what I saw was very degraded and black and white, and you couldn't see the bald cap on Max Schreck and the grease paint. He just seemed like a vampire, and it felt real. I had never seen a Dracula that I connected with so much. At 17 years old, I had the opportunity to do a senior-directed play. And I said to my friend Ashley Kelly Tata, who's now a prominent theater and opera director, what if we did Nosferatu on stage, black and white, with black and white makeup and black and white sets. Like, would that be cool? No, that's stupid. And she said, no, that would be cool. So we did that. And then this gentleman, Edward Langlois, who had the kind of cool theater in southern New Hampshire. He did The Duchess of Malfi and Sam Shepard when everyone else was doing My Fair Lady. And he saw the show and invited us to do a more professional version of it at his theater. And it changed my life. It cemented the fact that I wanted to be a director and I wanted to tell stories in this way. And even if this adaptation of Nosferatu that we're discussing now had never existed, Nosferatu would always be like a big part of my identity as someone who makes creative work.
Just that sense of scenery. And as you say that you connected with Nosferatu as a kid on some level, I'm wondering on what level? Is it the outcast, the person who's misunderstood?
There must be some fascination with things that I can't comprehend as a kid. But as an adult, obviously it's easier to dig into those topics and explore them thoroughly, like I was attempting to do to some degree with this version. But I'm also, like, John Huston was interviewed at the end of his life and was asked why he made such dark films, and he answered, "The dark pearl glistens." And so I think, I have that same kind of fascination of what is beautiful and compelling about dark topics.
And those two things seem to be on the either side of life, right?
Sure.
Death, sex, and they're both in many ways taboos, but
Absolutely.
Universal.
I needed to understand, like, what was it that I could bring to it that was made it worth telling again. And one of the things that I like about the original so much is that Murnau and his collaborators had the sensitivity to have Ellen, the female protagonist, emerge as the central character at the end of the film. And I thought, what if it is her story from the beginning? Like, this is much more interesting. And this was, my way into creating this Ellen character who is a woman who feels very alone, very isolated, is very much a modern woman who is, trapped in the 19th century. She's as much of a victim of 19th century society as she is the vampire. And she has this compulsion and this connection to darkness and the other side, and she has no language for it. She has no way to understand it. She has a loving husband who she loves too, but he can't see this other side of her, and she's called melancholic, and she's called hysterical. And then the tragedy of Ellen is that the one person who she can connect with in this other side, this dark side, this repressed sexual side, is a demon, is a vampire. And so it makes for a kind of tragic love triangle. And so that was that's kind of the thrust of this new interpretation of Nosferatu. Here, vampires in the folkloric tradition are walking corpses. They're more similar visually to zombies. And so to have and if I was going to tell this story again, it needed to be scary, and that was a way to make the vampire scary again.
And as you talk about things being scary, that's a word you didn't use to describe when you first saw Nosferatu. Were you scared?
I wasn't scared, but I was haunted. Romantic male lead threw open the lid of the sarcophagus in the Murnau film. That was a jump scare in 1922. And that while there were horror movies before Nosferatu very much invented horror films. So my film is in conversation both with that movie, but also horror history. And there are times when it's a single candle is the only thing giving us exposure. But because of faster lenses and faster film stock, we're able to accomplish that. But it is just another piece of trying to get us as audience members to be absorbed by and immersed by the world.
Historical accuracy is a big, almost trademark of yours throughout your films.
Sure.
Speak to me about how you got there.
I mean, I do a lot of reading on my own, and I both online and in the library and in the bookstores, and that starts me on a path. But then by the time the film becomes more real, we are able to hire consultants. We had consultants who knew about alchemy, who were double checking that everything in Willem Dafoe's attic laboratory was correct. We worked with Florin Lazarescu, who's a Romanian novelist and poet and screenwriter and expert in folklore, and who also helped recreate a dead language for us in the film. That Orlok speaks ancient Dacian, which is the language that the ancestors of ethnic Romanians would have spoken. We ended up shooting the film in Prague, and we built pretty much everything you see on screen. Certainly all the exteriors, the castle, interior, pretty much all the interiors. The castle interior we built, the monastery interior we built this massive backlot set of a northern German city. We built the Transylvanian village, but we went to Transylvania. We went to the castles there. We went to vernacular architecture museums, and archives. We went to northern Germany to study the remains of the buildings. There was nothing, because of World War II, there was nothing sort of like intact, so we knew we had to like create it ourselves. But yeah, there's just, for me, there's just so much joy in doing that, We use the exterior of Hunedoara Castle as the exterior of Castle Orlok. I don't know how many spiral castle staircases I've gone up in the past 10 years, but more than I ever thought I would, that's for sure.
After knowing the material so intimately for so long, what was it like for you to be in the physical place that inspired the material?
Yeah, being in Transylvania for the first time 10 years ago was amazing. And it was also even more of a time machine than it is now. And you'd see shepherds in the fields, like in their big shaggy coats, like laying down with the sheep. And it's like pretty astonishing. But it was also astonishing, to finally make the movie. It took the movie had some false starts, and I'm glad that it did, because I'm not as adept a filmmaker as I was when I first thought I would make this. But it was emotional to finally do it, to be on this backlot that's like 6 city blocks created for the movie, and knowing that Craig, my production designer, the first film we did together was a movie called The Witch, where we created this tiny little thatched farm, and that felt at the time like a major achievement, And then I'm also thinking about the cardboard sets that I made with my friends when I was 17, and here we've come to this place. So it was pretty incredible.
How treacherous was the journey to get to this?
And when it fell apart the second time, I thought someone's trying to send a sign to say, like, don't make this movie,
From the other side.
Well, maybe, but there is a lot of hubris in trying to do Nosferatu. So I felt, which was something that I was struggling with from the beginning, like, do I have the right to do this? Should I be doing this? And so it felt at times like, no, I should not be. But then, another movie that I thought I was going to do didn't happen. And I went to the head of Focus Features, who I have a nice relationship with, and said, Nosferatu. So, which I think is also nice timing, but, it's been a while.
What are we to take from its Christmas Day release?
There's a Christmas tree in the movie. There's a Christmas carol in the movie. There's snow. Yeah.
It's a sharp piece of counter-programming.
I think so.
And there is a huge following to the original movie. You have your own following. And do you read your own Reddit pages?
My mom sends me like everything she can find online about me, but which tend to be articles. I haven't really checked out the Reddit stuff so much.
Well, I've been scouring it lately.
Okay.
And your fans are thrilled and excited about this and reading into every poster, image, and pixel that they can
Wonderful.
interpret. What do you have to say to people who are super fans, not just of yours, but of the work itself, who are really anticipating your vision?
I hope you like it. It's and definitely please see it in a movie theater, because not only is that the best way to see it, but it's the best way to hear it. And I think the sound design and the music plays such an enormous part of the storytelling that to be fully immersed, you want to be in a movie theater and not, like, even if you have a nice sound bar or whatever at home, like, your dog's not barking, your kid's not asking for a cup of water, like, you're just there, I mentioned briefly that Orlok in this film is a walking corpse. And if you're going to invite someone to your castle, and you're dead, you don't want your house guests to know that. I mean, there are things that do acknowledge Max Shrek, because you need to respect and acknowledge the past, but it is something else, and so we wanted to have people be curious about what it might be. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work. Bill trained with Elsa Juniusdottir, who's an opera singer, to lower his voice an octave, and we did lots of work, back and forth, creating the voice and the accent and what it would be. And and I showed him a digital painting that I made of how I pictured Orlok, which is very close to what the final makeup and costume was. But of course, Linda Muir, my costume designer, took it much further. David White, the prosthetics designer, took it much further. And when Bill first saw the sculpts of the makeup, the bust of the makeup, he said, that guy didn't look anything like me when he was alive. This is a lot. And I said, exactly, but you need to transform. And then when we did the first makeup fitting, I saw when he understood a little bit about the character and saw he could make the makeup work. And then finally, the second full makeup and costume test, I saw Orlok. And
you
Bill,
saw it click.
I saw it click. And and Bill, it was it's 6 hours of makeup to go to the full process of becoming this character. And also Bill had to channel a lot of real darkness. I mean, I'm obviously into a lot of obscure and murky things, but when Bill was telling me about his interior process of becoming the character, it was frightening, which is a lot to take on, and I think it shows. Like in sequence, everyone's very focused, and I'm playing scary music to keep everyone in the mood. It's yeah. Yeah, well, when Bill played Pennywise the clown in It, he felt sort of too isolated. So I said, on the weekends we can all be friends and it's all good. But you're also, you're playing a dead 55-year-old, but you're not 55.
The mustache on your main character is a conscious choice.
Basically, with my design of the vampire, I said, what would a dead Transylvanian nobleman look like? And so that means a certain kind of attire. He's wearing 16th century Hungarian nobleman clothing. That's surprising. This cloak with sleeves that are impossibly long. Why are they so long? Because it showed how much money you had for sleeves you're never going to put your arms in. It just I'm loaded. And it also suggested what his facial features would be, and it also suggested a mustache. Try to find a Transylvanian nobleman without a mustache or a beard. I challenge you to do it. If you don't feel like Googling, most people know what Vlad the Impaler looks like, and he has that same prominent mustache. But also, if you notice, like in the Romanian village, they all have mustaches, or beards too. It's a cultural thing. His hairstyle is also something that is a bit unique. That also comes obviously from the research.
I know that you have said, some have asked you if CGI was used or if a dancer was used for some of the scenes, and you've been clear in saying no, she did the physical work.
Yeah, Lily is tremendous, and the way she's able to plug herself into this dark, haunted place quite easily is very impressive. We were on the same page. And when she gave her audition, I was in tears by how raw and powerful it is. Very much the way her performance in the film is so raw and powerful. And she's, incredibly hardworking. She was working on her dialect months before we went to camera, and then she worked with Marie Gabrielle Rodi, who's a choreographer who specializes in a Japanese dance tradition called Buto. Marie Gabrielle and I looked at Charcot, who was this 19th century psychologist who studied hysteria. He had illustrations commissioned of every hysterical attitude, every pose that his patients would make for various reasons, and we use that as a roadmap to kind of create Lily's wild physical performance. And Lily does it so powerfully. The Transylvanian village exterior, which is one shot, was one that was particularly challenging and long to do. I think that the worst part about being on set sometimes is like everyone's just kind of like sitting around, and when it's not their time to shine, like there's nothing happening. But it's everybody's time to shine when we do these long shots, and that means all the actors and the technicians.
The one and only Willem Dafoe keeps
Yes.
coming back to work with you.
Yes, lucky me. We both have a theatrical background, a background in the theater, and we think about acting in very much the same way. Willem likes to just do. He just jumps in there, and like, yes, sometimes we need to have conversations. I always send him a lot of research and things to consider. But when we do 2 weeks of rehearsal, and from the moment that he first opens his mouth, like he is the character, even if that changes and develops, like he's there. And Willem also, Willem just kind of gets the joke of life, and so.
Which means what?
Well, every character that he plays, he's able to give it a kind of fire, a kind and there's humor there, and there's understanding there. I mean, even if he's playing like a dark bastard, like, because of who Willem is, he makes that role someone that the audience can engage with and isn't repulsed by. I'm so lucky that Willem continues to want to work with me. There's very few authors who are like a Shakespeare who is doing all kinds of different things. Most people in their humble way are closer to Charles Dickens, who's kind of got his thing. Like every Charles Dickens thing is kind of the same. They're all awesome. But they're different shades of something that he was always compelled to say. And then as far as repeat collaborators, it's just the best way to work, because you already trust each other, you already know each other. It's a cliche, but there's a shorthand, and that shorthand is everything, because as I said earlier, you become extensions of each other, and it's also really lovely because you're able to push each other further in collaboration. My film crew is its own sort of weird family at this point. We all know each other too well.
Did that lead to any surprises during production for you?
I don't like surprises. I plan and pre-plan, and we storyboard. Jaron Blaschke, my DP, and I, with a storyboard artist, we storyboard the movie to an inch of its life. It's surprising that the film doesn't feel entirely dead because we plan it so much.
It's a reflection of a black and white silent film, and you're effectively doing it in full living color with all the bells and whistles of modern technology, but it feels creepy. It feels like it's in black and white.
The atmosphere on the interiors, we desaturate the visual image. The costumes don't have a lot of color in them to begin with, but we also desaturate the image a bit. And then the scenes that that take place with moonlight are almost black and white. Our eyes, when we are in moonlight, actually see close to black and white, and so that's what we were trying to replicate.
Cool. Watching this thing, and some of the people here who watched it as well have had nightmares because of it.
Splendid.
What scares you?
Jaron, my cinematographer, texted me a couple of years ago, "What are you the most afraid of?" And I replied, being alone, going too deep in the occult and becoming insane, and being stabbed like in a dark alleyway, taken by surprise. And then he texted back, "My daughter was actually asking for a Halloween project."
But those were some good options. What do you hope someone who watches this movie and has the experience that you laid out, what do you hope they walk away either feeling or with?
I mean, for fans of the genre, I hope that, it connects with them, and it both feels new and also somehow cozy, and that they're just, taken outside of the everyday life. You know, I mean, I've been asked many times if I would ever make a contemporary movie, and I have no interest in it. Like that, I would have to photograph. You know, photographing a car is bad enough, but photographing a cell phone is like a true nightmare scenario for me. And you know, I get enough of the kitchen sink in my own kitchen, so like let's go somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, there were thousands of real rats, and you know, we had the best animal trainers in the business. The Barnett family is really incredible. So they actually trained like a couple hundred of the rats to enter on cue. Rats are very intelligent, and they were easy to work with, but they are also incontinent, which I didn't know. And so the smell is quite overwhelming. And there is, you know, a scene where one of our lead actors has several rats on their body, and you know, in between takes, there would, I don't know if this is too gross for CBS, but you know, there's, you know, urine pooling, like, you know, in their clavicle.
So, give us a bit of context between what we all know as Dracula and the story that is Nosferatu, and the differences there.
So I think, you know, when you believe it, it's real, and when it's real, it's more compelling.
Okay, I'll let you dodge this question then. Considering how many years in between your projects and how focused you are on detail and historical accuracy, what's worth doing next?
I don't know what, you know, I mean, it's been a difficult climate this past year. It's been, you know, recognizable IPs, and horror movies like under a certain budget that seem to be the only things that work. Luckily, this is a recognizable IP, so hopefully, like, you know, it works out. But that, you know, poses a challenge as a filmmaker. I think that's one of the reasons why we've had this sort of horror movie renaissance lately, is because it is a genre where filmmakers who have like personal things to say, interesting things to say, it gives them, you know, a kind of film it gives them a place to explore that, you know, in commercial cinema.
I am guessing, since you don't like surprises, that Willem Dafoe's schnapps line was not ad-libbed.
No, there's no ad-libbing.
All right, thanks for watching, people. Drop your opinions in the comments, and we've got more interesting videos coming up right now.